Welcome back. This is video number 2, and this is the anatomy of successful infographics. Now, we're not necessarily going to break down and talk about content and different ideas that you can utilize for your own infographics, but we are going to break down the broad spectrum of infographics. And then from that point, we're going to break it down further and further and further. So let's start with the basics. What is an infographic? Well, an infographic, as you know, is information plus graphics combined together. Now the question begs, how much content should you use? How much graphics should you use? What kinds of graphics should you use? Well, let's talk about that. So an infographic is made up of sections that build up to tell a story in one holistic graphical presentation. So I really want you to think about that. Infographics tell a story. If you think about the stories that you've been told, a lot of them end up with some sort of moral or a lesson at the end of the story. And if you haven't, then if you notice, the really good stories end with that type of content, an angle. So your goal here is to tell a story via your infographics. So they have to build up upon each other. They can't be scattered and all over. So they have to have an end goal. So your end goal, obviously, in your case, is it could be branding. You could try to get people more acquainted with your brand, with your product, with your service, with what you're offering that could potentially help your potential prospect and potential customer. So number 1, an awesome infographic should tell a story. So I want you to think about that. What kind of story do you want to tell? So you want to establish a flow and make sure that each section connects with each other. So as I mentioned earlier, it cannot be scattered. It has to be connected to each other to end up building upon each other with the end goal in mind. The lesson, the moral, which is getting somebody to ultimately buy and get interested in your product and get interested in what your product, what your company is passionate about. And number 2 is balance and consistency in style. You want to think of a theme that goes along with your story. Not many themes, but just one theme. You can think about a couple of themes, but just pick one. You want to limit the color palette or the colors that you utilize within your infographic up to 4 different colors max. And the reason being is because you don't want to get too scattered. You don't want to pull people into too many directions, otherwise they will become distracted. So you want to be simple, consistent, but yet it appeals to them and the information appeals to them. And the infographics and the graphics also appeal to them. Because a graphic is something that is going to stick in your mind. I can think back to a lot of infographics that I viewed, and I can remember the content from those infographics versus articles that I have read. Even the articles that might be interesting, I've remembered those infographics more than I have the text. And that is a similar case with a lot of people out there, especially with visual and kinesthetic learners. Visual and kinesthetic learners actually make up a large majority of your audience out there, especially on the online business or online presence. Bold or adding colors and style to make pertinent information pop. So you want to figure out what information is going to be important and then bold it, add color, add life to it, but not too much life. You don't want to get all too many different colors and get crazy. Just want to be consistent and simple. Font should be legible, should be professional. Limit your font to about maximum of 2 styles. So same with font, same with colors, same with graphics. Don't want to get too fancy or too crazy. And use various headlines to grab attention. An ideal size of infographics is about 735 pixels wide or width and up to 5,000 pixels of height. So you can see that they are longer in height than in width. Use images. You want to stick with one style for all of your images. So in other words, you don't really want to use cartoon pictures and then real life pictures or even icons all mixed together. You want to stay consistent. So if you look at really successful infographics, a lot of times they typically are utilizing cartoon or mascots or some sort of non-live type picture, but it's consistent throughout the whole infographic. It's fine if you want to use real life pictures, but if you use real life pictures and cartoons and all these other different variations of graphics, it just gets confusing and it distracts the eyes. So you don't want that. You want them to pay close attention to what you are trying to offer as far as information goes and graphics goes. And what I would advise you to do is use a JPEG file within the graphics itself. So obviously the big graphics is made up of tiny little images, which I would recommend you use JPEG or even PNG, because JPEGs tend to be compressed images. Therefore, the images are smaller and therefore it takes faster time to actually load. So if you were to utilize bigger pictures, larger size pictures within your infographics, then it's going to slow the load time down. So you have to think about it this way. Not everybody is going to have a super fast connection. Even though you might have it and all your friends might have it or your region might have it, if you're trying to appeal to everybody around the world, some people will only have slow connections. And if that is the case and your infographic takes too long to load, guess what? Just like leaving a website because it takes too long to load, they're going to leave your infographic as well. Number 4 is adding statistics and interesting facts. So obviously, graphics alone is not going to be what sells. What sells is the actual statistics, the graphs, the actual information. The content is what sells. The graphics is what gets people interested and builds upon that curiosity. So you want to add graphs, charts, data to back up your claim, right? You want to share interesting facts to capture your audience's attention. So as you're building up that story, your end goal in mind, you can start jotting down facts, questions, maybe facts or statistics that back up what you're trying to sell. So let's say, for example, that you're trying to sell something related to YouTube marketing or something. Obviously, for that case, you want to back up your stats by saying YouTube gets this many hits, YouTube this gets this many views and conversions and everything like that. So you want to make sure that you have facts and statistics to back up your claim. Otherwise, it's just a graphic. It's nothing really special. So here are some examples of different facts, different sales copy essentially that you can utilize. Stuff like, did you know that 58% of the people in this market do this? Or 58% of this market do not do this? Or 99% of this market don't even realize this statistic? Something that might be shocking but truthful at the same time. You definitely want to be truthful. You definitely don't want to lie. Top 5, top 10 things maybe that you can combine this. So for example, the top 5 things that 58% of the people in this market do not know. So combine these examples together. And then the highest ranking, the lowest ranking things. Top reasons, top 10 reasons, top 5 reasons, top 3 reasons why maybe 99% of the market does not know this, or the most popular, things like that. So hopefully that gives you some ideas on different angles, different facts, different statistics that you can utilize within your own infographic to back up your claim. Now, as far as getting the word out for your infographics, you obviously want to make sure that your infographics are easily shared. So if you create embed codes for your infographic for people to post on their own websites, share it and make people's lives easier in that aspect, it's going to get you more traffic. You also want to add social sharing buttons. So in a way, right now, I'm giving you some ideas on getting more traffic, but I'm going to talk more about that in video number 8 and 9. So at the end of the day, if you make it easy for people to understand your graphic, to share your infographic, you can use this infographic strategy to not only get more traffic, but convert that traffic into actual customers. Now, keep in mind that at any time, if you refer to a statistic that is not necessarily yours, or maybe it's coming off a website, you want to make sure that you give that site credit. So make sure that you cite your sources, you cite your reference links at the very bottom part of your infographics. Now, as far as utilizing images go, you need to make sure that you buy your images from a royalty-free site such as bigstockphoto.com or graphicriver.net. And the reason being is you can't just go on Google and grab images because it looks good. By doing so, you're going to be violating somebody else's copyright law, and you definitely don't want to go down that route. So make sure that you're safe by buying royalty-free images so that you can get all the traffic that you can legally. And when it comes to branding, make sure that you add your brand name and webpage URL at the very bottom of your graphic. So sometimes people might embed it onto their website and they might not link back. But if you have that link at the bottom of your graphic, then of course people can find you after they look at the infographic. It appeals to them. It's something that they definitely want to find out more information about. So make sure that you have those key elements on your infographic so you're not losing out on traffic. Now, keep in mind at the same time that if your webpage URL is too long, you might want to shorten it up a little bit, but that's just something to keep in mind so you don't lose out on traffic. If somebody sees a URL that's too long, they might think to themselves, well, it's too long, I don't really have a lot of time, I might have to do it later. But you want to make sure that you get them at that moment, not get them later, because most people will forget about later. And if you think about you and I, when we say we're going to do that later, how many times do we really do it later? Or how many times do we really remember that exact URL? So same with your prospects and same with your customers. Make sure that it's easy for them to take the call to action. And I'll talk more about that in a lot more in depth in the future videos. So with that said, let's move on to video number 3 and talk about 8 different styles of infographics